Rodenticide poisoning. When we think about rodenticides, we think warfarin. But there are many kinds of rodenticides. Not just the anticoagulant ones, of which warfarin is under. There are also bromethalin, cholecalciferol, and zinc phosphide rodenticides. It is important to differentiate these because not only are their pathogeneses different, but also their therapeutic approaches. Animals under our care may accidentally ingest rodenticide bait or ingest a recently poisoned rodent and get secondary poisoning. And sometimes absolutely evil people intentionally poison our pets. History is important when poisoning is suspected. Owners may be asked about the most accurate time of exposure, brand name of rodenticide with the active ingredients and concentrations, and how much is missing/ingested. In this video, we will discuss the different types of rodenticides. I'll probably make it a two-parter if it gets too long, and I'll leave a table for comparison in my social media pages. To start off, we have anticoagulant rodenticides. Anticoagulant rodenticides are called such because they keep blood from coagulating. They do so by inhibiting the enzyme vitamin K epoxide reductase. How does that affect coagulation? Well, in the liver, vitamin K in its dietary form, vitamin K quinone, is converted to vitamin K hydroquinone by quinone reductase. Vitamin K hydroquinone then donates an electron to the enzyme gamma-glutamyl carboxylase, which is responsible for making coagulation factors 2, 7, 9, and 10 functional. This carboxylation step oxidizes vitamin K hydroquinone into vitamin K epoxide. And vitamin K epoxide is converted back into vitamin K quinone by vitamin K epoxide reductase. Do you follow so far? Thus, when this enzyme is inhibited, we don't get the coagulation factors. And they're important in all the pathways of the coagulation cascade. Factor 7 in the extrinsic pathway, factor 9 in the intrinsic pathway, and factors 2 and 10 in the common pathway. There is, however, a latent period before clinical signs show. This is because there are still clotting factors present and are being used up. The length of this latent period depends on the species, dose, and activity of the animal. Newer products, however, can be more toxic. First-generation anticoagulants require multiple feedings to result in toxicity. Intermediate anticoagulants require fewer feedings. And second-generation anticoagulants are highly toxic and only require a single feeding. Clinical signs are usually related to hemorrhage of some sort, like hematomas, epistaxis, hematemesis, hemothorax, hyphema, and hematuria. There can also be limping due to bleeding in the joints, known as hemarthrosis, or coughing and wheezing because of bleeding in the lungs. Sudden death with no clinical signs shown is also a possibility. Lab findings can show prolonged prothrombin time, activated partial thromboplastin time or thrombin time, in the presence of normal fibrinogen. Because it's fibrin not being made, fibrinogen is not used up. Treatment. Vitamin K1 is the antidote of choice, and is best given orally with a little bit of fatty food, as this helps with absorption. A word of warning. Intravenous vitamin K1 has been reported to cause anaphylactic reactions. So, no to IV. Best to avoid injections entirely because of the risk of bleeding and hematoma formation at the site of injection. But if absolutely needed, like if the animal cannot eat, then subcutaneously with the smallest needle possible is advised. Something students may get confused with is that vitamin K3 is not effective. It's given as a feed supplement. So don't get it too confused. If ingestion was recent, like within the last 8 hours, decontamination by inducing emesis and giving activated charcoal should be done. And you'll hear this a lot in most toxicology cases. And also symptomatic treatment for the clinical signs that arise. Next, bromethalin rodenticides. Bromethalin is an uncoupler of oxidative phosphorylation, especially in the central nervous system. When this happens, ATP production decreases. Sodium and potassium pumps don't work, and sodium accumulates inside the cell, resulting in intramyelin fluid accumulation, resulting in cerebral and spinal edema. Clinical signs are dose-dependent. High doses lead to acute convulsant syndrome within a matter of hours. The animal may be hyperexcitable, have muscle tremors, grand mal seizures, hyperthermia, have a coma, and even die. Lower doses result in a paralytic syndrome, and clinical signs may not appear until several days later. These signs are paresis or paralysis that progresses from caudal to cranial, loss of deep pain response, and ataxia. Cats usually develop this regardless of dose. Treatment. The goal is to decontaminate as soon as possible and prevent cerebral edema. So, induce emesis and give activated charcoal with cathartic. Repeated doses of activated charcoal help because bromethalin undergoes enterohepatic recirculation. And symptomatic treatment for the neurologic signs that arise, such as anticonvulsants for the seizures. You may think of using mannitol and corticosteroids for the cerebral edema, but this isn't helpful because the edema is intramyelin. And I'll end this video here. Part 2 will cover cholecalciferol and zinc phosphide rodenticides. You know what to do so you won't miss it.